Last summer was strange for me. I moved to Clearwater for a fresh start. I was a freelance graphic designer, and after losing clients during the pandemic, I thought a small coastal town would help spark my creativity. The town was picturesque, with its vintage buildings and a lovely boardwalk. My rental was right by some thick woods, where I often heard locals whispering about odd gatherings at night. One evening, I sat on my porch sketching. The sun was setting, and I thought I heard chanting coming from the woods. At first, I brushed it off as late-night beach bonfires or some neighborhood event. But as days went by, I noticed my neighbors acting strangely. They exchanged nervous glances and whispered as I passed by. It felt odd, but I tried to ignore it. Then, one night, I saw something that chilled me to my core. I peeked out of my window and saw flickering lights deep in the woods. Figures in dark cloaks were gathered in a circle, moving in a strange rhythm. My heart raced. I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't look away. They chanted louder, and their voices blended into an eerie sound. I felt cold, as if the night was closing in on me. A few days later, I heard about people disappearing. Locals I recognized had simply vanished. I began to wonder if those gatherings were connected. When I asked around, the townsfolk got uneasy. They changed the subject or gave me nervous smiles. It felt like I was walking on thin ice. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. One night, I heard the chanting again. It was much stronger this time. It echoed in my mind, calling to me. I gathered my courage and stepped outside. My stomach twisted as I walked toward the trees. I felt foolish, but I needed to know what was happening. The air felt thick and heavy, and my hands shook. Suddenly, I froze. Just outside the tree line, a figure stepped from the shadows. It wasn't wearing a cloak, but its face was hidden. "Where do you think you're going?" it asked, with a bone-chilling voice. My body tensed, and I stumbled back. I turned to run, but then I heard the whisper again. "Why are you here?" It felt like it knew me. I turned back to face it, but there was no one there. Confusion washed over me. I felt like I was losing my grip. Had I gone crazy, or was something truly wrong in Clearwater? The questions swirled in my mind, trapping me in a web of uncertainty. What was going on in those woods? I wanted to escape, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every day after, I felt watched. I kept hearing snippets of conversations, but couldn't make out what they were saying. I tried to leave, but a part of me was too curious. What was that cult doing, and why did it feel like they had their eyes on me? During that summer, I kept questioning everything, and I've never truly stopped. The following morning, I decided I couldn't just sit around anymore. I had to find answers. I walked into town, trying to act casual, but inside, I felt like a tightrope walker. My first stop was the local cafe. Regulars gathered there, sipping coffee and chatting, and I hoped someone would spill something useful. As I entered, the bell over the door jingled, and heads turned. The chatter quieted. I ordered a coffee and scanned the room. Most faces were familiar, but they looked away when I tried to catch their gaze. I spotted Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who'd always been kind to me. Surely she'd share something. "Morning, Mrs. Thompson," I said, trying to sound cheerful. She smiled weakly, but quickly glanced at the table next to hers, where a hushed conversation was happening. "Oh, morning, dear," she replied before turning back to her coffee. I sensed her hesitation. There was more she wasn't saying. I moved closer. "I've heard about people disappearing. Do you know anything about those gatherings in the woods?" Her face paled. "You shouldn't talk about that, dear," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just stay away from the woods." I felt frustration bubble inside me. "But people are missing. I can't just ignore it." Before she could reply, the door swung open. A man in a dark coat stepped in, scanning the cafe as if searching for something, or someone. My heart raced. I had seen him before, lurking around town. Something about him felt wrong. "Is everything okay?" I asked Mrs. Thompson, but she was staring at the man with wide eyes. He approached the counter and placed an order with an unnerving calmness. I wanted to bolt, to slip out the door, but I felt rooted to the spot. Something told me I needed to know if he was connected to the cult. When he sat down, I noticed a small emblem pinned to his coat. It looked similar to the one I'd seen on the cloaked figures, but the details were different. It had a twisted design that made me uneasy. My hand instinctively reached for my sketchbook. I scribbled the symbol down, hoping to study it later. Just then, the man glanced in my direction. I quickly averted my gaze, pretending to focus on my coffee. I felt a chill creep down my spine. He was watching me. Minutes later, he stood up and headed toward the door. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I knew I had to follow him. As I stepped outside, I saw him turn down a narrow alleyway. I hesitated. Should I? Curiosity pushed me forward, even as fear held me back. I followed, my breath shallow. As I rounded the corner, I saw him talking with another figure, their whispers muffled. I inched closer, trying to catch what they were saying, but I could only. The word sacrifice floated through the air. My heart dropped. Suddenly, the man turned, his gaze locking onto mine. In that moment, I knew I had crossed a line. Panic surged through me. I turned to run, adrenaline pumping, when I heard a low voice call out, "You shouldn't have come here." Then, everything went dark. I woke up feeling disoriented. My head throbbed as I blinked against the harsh light. I sat up slowly, taking in my surroundings. I was in a small, dimly lit room with rough wooden walls. The air was musty, and I could smell something strange, like wet earth mixed with a hint of smoke. My heart raced. Where was I? I frantically searched the room for any sign of my captors. It was empty. I took a deep breath. Mustering my courage, I stood up. My legs felt wobbly, but they held me as I approached the door. It was slightly ajar, creaking as I nudged it open. Peering outside, I found myself in a long, narrow corridor. It was eerily quiet. No sounds of footsteps, no murmurs of conversation. Only the faint scent of something burning lingered. I stepped out, heart thumping in my chest. I needed to find a way out. As I moved silently down the corridor, I noticed doors lining the walls. Some were fully closed, while others stood slightly open, revealing darkened rooms beyond. I felt drawn to one of the open doors, and I couldn't help but peek inside. Inside, I saw a table covered in strange artifacts, bottles with odd symbols, twisted sticks, and what looked like dried herbs. My fingers itched to touch them, to understand what I was seeing. But as I stepped in closer, a feeling of dread washed over me. This could be tied to whatever was happening in the woods. Then I heard footsteps coming down the hall. I froze, my heart pounding louder. I quickly ducked behind the door, holding my breath. The footsteps grew closer, and I peered out. A cloaked figure hurried by, their hood pulled low, concealing their face. I craned my neck to see if I recognized them. That's when I noticed the emblem on their cloak. It was the same twisted symbol I had sketched before. My stomach churned. They were definitely part of the cult. I needed to stay hidden. After the figure passed, I eased out of the room, hoping to find an escape. I hurried to the end of the corridor, where there was a staircase leading up. The urge to climb it felt strong. Perhaps there would be a way out. I gripped the railing tightly, moving cautiously up the stairs. Each creak seemed to echo in the silence. When I reached the top, I found another door. This one looked less foreboding, with light streaming through the cracks. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Voices floated through, discussing plans for the next gathering. My blood ran cold. They were talking about More sacrifices. I needed to learn more, but how? I pushed the door gently, and it swung open. Inside, I saw a group of figures dressed in dark robes gathered around a table. Maps covered the surface, adorned with markings that looked like the woods. I ducked behind the doorframe, holding my breath, desperate to understand their next move. As I peered in, a sudden crash from downstairs shattered the focus of the room. Everyone turned toward the sound. My chance. I darted back to the staircase, heart racing with the thrill of escape and the fear of being caught. But that was when I heard someone call out, "Get her!" I bolted, adrenaline surging. I had to find a way out before they caught me. I sprinted down the staircase, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The wooden steps creaked ominously under my weight, echoing my panic. Behind me, I could hear shouts, urgent voices carrying the weight of pursuit. I didn't dare look back. I had to focus on escaping. At the bottom of the stairs, I surged into the corridor. My mind raced, searching for an option. I spotted an open door at the far end, the distant light beckoning me. I gritted my teeth and ran, pushing myself faster than I thought possible. Just as I reached the door, I stumbled over a loose floorboard and nearly fell. I steadied myself and burst through the entrance. Slamming the door behind me, I found myself in a cluttered storage room. Boxes piled high and old furniture were strewn everywhere. It smelled musty, like old secrets collected in the dark. I quickly glanced around, desperately searching for an exit. My eyes landed on a window at the far side, partially covered by a cracked curtain. I rushed toward it, but just as I reached it, I heard the footsteps approaching the door I had just escaped from. They were close. I felt a panic rising in my throat. I pulled at the window, but it wouldn't budge. Frantic, I looked around for something to pry it open. My hands found a rusted rod among the clutter, and I forced it under the window frame, working with all my strength. The footsteps were louder now, and I heard voices calling out to each other. "She went this way!" Panic surged through me. I shoved harder, and finally the window creaked open, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Just then, the door burst open behind me. I spotted the cloaked figures stepping into the room, their faces shadowed in the dim light. I took a deep breath and climbed onto the ledge, slotting my body into the opening. I could already feel their eyes on me. With a fierce push, I squeezed through the window, scraping my arms against the rough edges. I tumbled onto the ground outside, pain flaring up my limbs as I hit the dirt. But there wasn't time to breathe. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the thicket of trees behind the building. Branches whipped at my face as I tore through the underbrush. I could hear them shouting now, their urgency matching my own. I zigzagged through the trees, hoping to lose them, desperate to find any sort of refuge. Suddenly, I burst into a small clearing, halted by the sight in front of me. A circle of stones lay in the center, arranged in an unsettling pattern. The ground was scorched, and the smell of something burnt lingered heavily in the air. This was the place, the focal point of their rituals. Just then, I spotted a figure emerging from the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing. My breath caught in my throat. I froze. It was a woman, dressed in the same dark robes. But unlike the others, her hood was down, exposing her face. She looked familiar. That was when recognition hit me. She was someone from my village, someone I had seen at the market. Fear twisted in my gut. What was she doing here? Before I could make sense of it, she turned her gaze right toward me. Her expression was unreadable, but the intent in her eyes felt dangerous. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice chilling. I knew then that this was far from over. I bolted back into the trees, my heart racing with more than just fear. I was running from something much larger than I had ever imagined. The branches clawed at me as I dashed deeper into the woods. I didn't stop to think. My feet carried me away from the clearing and the woman in the dark robe. But a nagging feeling in the back of my mind urged me to look back. I forced myself to keep moving, driven by the adrenaline pumping through my veins. After what felt like an eternity, I slowed my pace, straining to hear. The shouts of the cloaked figures grew distant. I leaned against a tree, breathing heavily, trying to collect my thoughts. Who was that woman? How could she be involved in this? I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. If they found me again, there would be no escape. There had to be a way to warn someone, to tip off the village about what I had stumbled upon. But first, I needed to get my bearings. As I crept through the underbrush, I spotted the faint glow of lights in the distance. A flicker of hope spread through me. It had to be the village. I turned toward the direction of the lights, feeling a bit steadier on my feet. But just as I took a few more steps, I heard a rustling behind me. My heart leaped into my throat. I turned slowly, trying to make out any shapes in the thick foliage. Nothing. I bit my lip and pressed onward, but the sounds continued. They were close. I took off again, moving cautiously, my breath hitching in my throat. Then, without warning, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was another cloaked person, just like the ones I had run from. My body tensed, ready to flee, but something felt different about this one. There was no urgency in their movement. "Wait!" a voice called out. It was female, softer than the others. I stopped, heart racing. This one didn't feel like a threat. "Please, I won't hurt you." I hesitated, unsure whether to trust her. "What do you want?" I managed to say, still backing away slowly. "I'm trying to help you." She pulled back her hood, revealing a pale face and wide, frightened eyes. "I know they're after you. You saw what you weren't supposed to see." My gaze darted around, looking for the nearest escape. "Why should I trust you?" I asked, my voice quaking. "Because I used to be one of them," she said, her eyes pleading with me. "But I left. They're dangerous. You have to get away before it's too late. They'll come for you again." I didn't know if I believed her, but the urgency in her gaze felt genuine. I had to make a decision. "What do you know?" I asked quickly. "I know their rituals. I know why they've been gathering," she said. "And I know that they believe you're important to their plans." My stomach dropped. "What plans? You don't understand. They think you hold the key to something that could change everything." Before I could process what she was saying, a loud crack echoed through the trees. I whipped around, and a feeling of dread crept up my spine. The cloaked figures were back, closing in on us. There was nowhere to run. Then, everything went dark. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the damp earth beneath me. I blinked against the blurred edges of my vision, trying to figure out where I was. The sounds of the forest were muted, like I was underwater. My mind raced, piecing together what had just happened. The cloaked figures, the woman. Had I really seen all that? I pushed myself up and glanced around. I was lying in a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees. The woman was gone, and I felt an unsettling emptiness where her presence had been. Had it all been a dream? I looked down at my clothes. They were muddy and torn, evidence of my flight through the woods. Just as panic threatened to claw at me again, I heard voices in the distance. Shouts, urgent and low, echoing through the silence. They were closer now. I needed to get out of there. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking, but determined to move. The village lights were only a short distance away. If I could just make it. I slipped through the trees, careful to keep my movements quiet. As I neared the edge of the clearing, the voices grew sharper, filled. I caught snippets of what they were saying. "She can't have gotten far," one voice hissed. "Split up!" My heart raced as I ducked behind a large tree, pressing myself into the rough bark.
I watched as two cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, their features obscured, but their intentions were clear. They were not giving up easily. That's when I noticed something glinting among the leaves, a metallic object partly buried in the dirt. Curiosity momentarily distracted me from the danger. I inched closer, kneeling down to get a better look. It was a silver pendant, intricately designed with an emblem I recognized when I was younger. It was the same symbol I had seen during the brief moments I managed to glimpse into the rituals they performed. A chill ran down my spine. This pendant had to be important to them. My fingers wrapped around it, and I felt a strange warmth radiate from the metal. Maybe if I took it, I could find out more about them. But would it also put me at greater risk? I quickly tucked the pendant into my pocket as the voices grew nearer. I had to keep moving. Hiding was not an option anymore. I stepped away from the tree, only to find myself almost face to face with another figure. I gasped, but it was another member of the cloaked group. They spotted me, eyes widening in surprise. "Get her!" they shouted. I was off again, sprinting past them, branches tearing at my clothes as I ran. The village was so close now, but fear surged through me, quickening my pulse. I could hear them behind me, closing in. The darkness and uncertainty of the woods enveloped me again. My breath came in sharp bursts, but I couldn't slow down. I remembered what the woman had said about the importance of my escape. There was no time to look back. I had to reach safety. And yet a dark thought gnawed at my mind. The cult had something planned for me, and I was only beginning to grasp what that could mean. Just as I thought I might burst through the tree line, a strong hand caught my arm, dragging me back. For a moment I struggled against the grip, certain that I was about to be pulled back into the shadows forever. But when I turned, I saw a familiar face. It was the woman from before. "You have to trust me now," she urged, her eyes wild with fear. "They don't know what I've done. We need to get out of here, or we won't get another chance." And then, without waiting for a reply, she pulled me away from the darkness. I stumbled after her, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The forest blurred past us as we ducked and weaved through the trees. The woman kept glancing back over her shoulder, her face taut with urgency. I could hear their voices echoing in the distance, calling for...
"Where are we going?" I gasped, trying to keep pace. "To safety," she said, her voice strained. "You have to keep up. I can't let them find us." I tried to piece together what was happening. Who was she? Why was I important to this chaotic escape? My mind churned with questions, but I couldn't afford the luxury of voicing them. Every step we took felt like a gamble. We reached a narrow path winding deeper into the woods, the ground littered with leaves and twigs. It was darker here, shadows stretching like fingers to ensnare us. I could hear the rustling of the cloaked figures behind us, growing louder, angrier. "All this for me?" I said, half joking, to punctuate the fear. The woman shot me a look that sent chills down my spine. "You don't understand," she said, voice harsh yet laced with worry. "They won't stop until they have you back. I need to explain, but not here. We have to move." Just then, we came across a small old cabin, barely standing. It was hidden behind thick brush and ancient trees. My heart sank at the sight. It looked like no one had been here in years. The paint was peeling and the door hung off its hinges. "Here," she said, practically dragging me inside. I hesitated before stepping across the threshold. I could hear footsteps approaching, louder now, and felt a spark of panic. Once inside, she shut the door quietly but firmly. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. "What's going on? Who are they?" I stammered, eyes darting around the dark room. "They're a cult," she whispered urgently. "What they want with you, it's not good. They believe you're a key to something ancient." She took a breath, glancing at the splintering wood of the door. "I've betrayed them. That's why they're after you now." "Betrayed them?" My mind raced. "What have you done?" "I have to show you." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her cloak and pulled out a small book, worn and tattered. "This contains everything. Their rituals, their plans, and a way to stop them. But you have to read it, understand it." Before I could answer, there was a loud crash outside. The door rattled as someone pounded on it. My heart sank. They were here. "Quick, hide," the woman hissed. "We'll have to wait them out. They can't know you're here." I darted behind a rickety table, my pulse racing as I strained to listen. My mind whirled with what she had just said. A key to something ancient? I had stumbled into a nightmare beyond my comprehension. What did they want from me? Then everything went silent. The pounding stopped. My breath hitched. There was no sound, just the creeping feeling that something was very wrong. "Stay quiet," she whispered, crouching beside me. I could feel the book pressed between us, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. But would we get the chance? That question hovered in the air as I realized the danger was only just beginning. I held my breath, straining to hear anything beyond the cabin walls. The silence stretched, a taut wire that could snap at any moment. Just as I began to wonder if they might be gone, a sinister whisper broke the stillness. "Search everywhere," a gravelly voice commanded from outside. "We don't leave until we find her." My heart raced again, an urgent reminder of how precarious our situation was. I glanced at the woman beside me. Her expression was grim, brows knit together in concentration. She seemed to be calculating, weighing our options, and I felt useless curled up behind the table. They can't be serious," I whispered to her, fear embedding itself in each syllable. "Serious enough," she replied, glancing toward a broken window. I followed her gaze, but saw nothing. "They will tear this place apart if they have to." I couldn't shake the weight of the book beneath my fingers. It felt as if it was alive, pulsing with relevance. What secrets did it hold? Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the door, splintering the wood further. My breath caught in my throat. They were coming in. "Listen to me," she leaned closer, urgent. "When I give you the signal, make a run for it. We need to get to the other side of the cabin. I'll distract them. You have to trust me." My stomach twisted. Trust her? I barely knew her. But there was no time for debate. I nodded, feeling a strange connection to her, born out of fear and urgency. Another crash reverberated through the cabin, and the door gave way. A cloaked figure stepped inside, scanning the room with dark, calculating eyes. It was then I realized the cabin was filled with shadows. More figures were outside, creeping closer. "Where are you?" the figure called, voice echoing off the walls. Panic bubbled within me, but the woman remained calm. She looked at me for just a moment and then grabbed the book, tucking it under her cloak. "Get ready," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos. The figure stepped farther inside, and she straightened up, stepping out from our hiding spot. "I'm here! You have what you want!" she shouted, voice sharp. The figure blinked, hesitating. "You shouldn't have come back." "Let her go!" she yelled, trying to hold her ground. "You can have me instead." I couldn't see what happened next. The other figures surged forward, and a wave of fear washed over me. I should help her, do something, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. That's when I saw it, a glint of metal beneath the floorboards. My curiosity battled my fear. Was it a weapon? Something to fight back? I crouched lower, reaching beneath, fingers brushing against cold steel. "Now!" the woman shouted, and I instinctively pulled the object free. A knife, surprisingly sharp and well kept. But before I could even process this newfound weapon, I felt a shiver pass through me. Someone was behind me. "Stop!" a voice commanded, and I spun around, knife raised, ready to confront whatever horror awaited. I faced the figure looming over me, their features obscured by a dark hood. A chill settled in my stomach, making my hands tremble around the knife's handle. I couldn't tell if it was fear or adrenaline pushing me forward. "Drop it!" the figure hissed. The voice was familiar, and for a fleeting second I thought I recognized it. I steadied my breath, keeping my grip firm. "No, get away from me!" I shouted, more forcefully than I felt. The figure hesitated, just for a moment, and I seized the chance, darting sideways, knife raised in warning. "Stop her!" another voice barked from the doorway. I glanced back to see a group of cloaked figures crowding the entrance, their intentions clear in the way they moved, like a pack of wolves closing in. Where was the woman? Had she gotten caught? I had to escape, and fast. I surged past the first figure, who barely reacted. The cabin felt small and dizzying, but I spotted an opening, an old door leading out to the woods at the back. I sprinted, heart pounding in my ears as shadows danced around me. Suddenly, I heard a roar of frustration behind me. "Get her!" The command sent a jolt of terror through my veins. I burst through the door and into the cool afternoon air, the sunlight a sharp contrast to the dim cabin. I didn't look back. I ran, fueled by a desperate need to survive. Branches clawed at my skin as I navigated through the trees, their dry leaves rustling like whispers of my pursuers. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I pushed myself harder. The sound of footsteps echoed behind me, getting closer. "Wait!" a voice pierced through the chaos, and I stumbled. It was her, the woman from the cabin, emerging from the shadows. She was running toward me, book still clutched in her arms. "They're coming!" she yelled, urgency lacing her tone. "We need to hide, now!" Without thought, I followed her deeper into the woods. The trees thickened around us, and I could scarcely see the path ahead. Despite the fear coursing through me, her presence felt strangely reassuring. After a few frantic moments, she stopped and motioned for me to crouch behind a massive tree trunk. We settled in, breathless and wide-eyed. "Did they follow us?" I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," she replied, scanning our surroundings. "But we don't have time. You must listen carefully." Her tone shifted, a blend of resolve and urgency. "That book I took, it holds the key. They want it more than anything. We can't let them take it back." I glanced at the worn leather cover she gripped tightly. "But why? What's so important about it?" She looked into my eyes, searching. "It's about them, their secrets, and yours. It's more than just a book, it's a map." "A map?" Before I could question further, the sound of branches snapping echoed nearby. I felt my heart skip a beat. They were getting closer. "Stay quiet," she hissed, pulling the book in closer. I nodded, but a new thought crossed my mind. If this book really was a map, where did it lead? Before I could ponder more, the shadows flitted closer, and I realized fear wasn't just creeping up my spine. It was now the palpable knowledge that lurking in the dark could hold more than just answers. It could hold my end. As we crouched in the shadows, I felt the weight of the forest pressing down around us, my heart hammering in my chest. The woman's whispered urgency echoed in my mind, and I clung to the idea that this book might hold some semblance of salvation. But the eerie calm of the woods was disconcerting. "They're searching for us," she breathed, eyes darting to the darkness just beyond our concealment. "If they find you, if they reclaim this book, they'll stop at nothing."
I couldn't shake the feeling of dread or the gnawing curiosity nagging at me. "You knew this would happen. Why didn't you just walk away?" I pressed, urgency blending with anger. "You chose to betray them. Didn't you think they'd come after you?" Her gaze hardened, and for a moment I saw the flicker of pain flash across her face. "You don't understand what they're capable of. No one does until it's too late." The rustling grew louder, and I sensed that time was slipping away. What are they planning? Why me? I had to know. They believe you are the key to something ancient, a relic tied to the symbols. You've unwittingly drawn attention to yourself just by living here. She glanced at the book, cradling it against her chest, as if it were a fragile bird. "What does it have to do with the woods?" I whispered, fear curling my fingers tightly around the knife hidden in my pocket. "What are they summoning?" "Rituals," she said, voice low and tense. "They're using sacrifices to awaken something dark. They think if they can harness it, they can gain power beyond measure." Chills crawled over my skin. The things I'd witnessed, the gatherings, the cloaks, the symbols, they were all pieces of a sinister puzzle. Suddenly, a shout broke through the thick silence. "She's back this way!" The urgency in the cloaked voice sent a jolt through me. "Quick!" the woman urged, and we slipped silently away from the tree, hearts pounding in sync. We needed a plan, an escape route. I didn't know where we were headed. It didn't matter. It felt like this forest was alive, distorting reality around us, wrapping us in its suffocating embrace. The deeper we ran, the more twisted the branches appeared, as if they were eager to ensnare us. "We can't outrun them forever," she said. "We need to find a place to confront them, to turn this on its head." "Confront them?" I exclaimed, incredulity sharpening my voice. "Are you out of your mind? What do you think they'll do to us?" "We have to fight fire with fire," she insisted, determination flashing in her eyes. "This book shows how to disrupt the ritual, the one they're preparing for tonight." In the back of my mind, I questioned how one book could hold that much power. Yet the idea of staking everything on knowledge felt strangely comforting against the madness swirling around us. "Do we really have a chance?" I asked, fear mingling with desperation. "If we invoke something, what happens then?" "Trust me," she replied fiercely, and her intensity inspired a flicker of bravery in me. Just as we rounded a cluster of trees, I heard the distinct sound of cracking branches behind us. They were close, very close. With furtive glances, we scrambled through a thicket toward a clearing. Minutes passed as fear twisted my gut. Those moments felt endless. Finally, I saw it, a circular clearing with stones arranged in a peculiar formation, the very site where I had first witnessed their gathering. "The stones," I murmured, recalling the eerie sight. "We could set up a counter-ritual here, but how?" "That's what the book's for," she hissed, urgency layering her words as she fumbled and flipped through its pages. "It outlines a way to disrupt the ceremony. We can make them lose their grip on whatever they've sought to summon." With no time to waste, we settled among the stones, the ancient energy charged and thick. The stillness is both a sanctuary and a prison, and the world around me felt eerily detached. I watched her fingers glide over the worn text, whispering incantations she barely understood. I tried to steady my breathing, grounding myself as shadows danced around us. But then, as if drawn by an unseen force, a chilling wind surged through the clearing, and I shivered. The occurrence did nothing to deter her focus, her voice rising with fervor. "Be ready!" she shouted as the wind whipped around us, the forest quaking with agitation. That's when I heard it, footsteps, heavy and determined, echoing through the trees. The cloaked figures were en route, and I could feel their malevolence before I saw them. "Stand your ground!" she cried, eyes widening as she pointed toward the oncoming darkness. "Now!" I steeled myself, raising the knife in one hand, the pendant she had given me clutched in the other.
The symbols etched into the metal glimmered faintly. My chest tightened, and it became clear that I stood on the edge of something monumental. I was caught between the remnants of the life I had known and the fathomless mystery unfolding before me. The cloaked figures broke through the tree line and slowed, their eyes settling on me, filled with a mix of anger and fear. "You didn't think you could escape us," the leader
hissed, voice slithering through the air. "You belong to us." And then everything erupted. As the woman finished her incantation, the earth trembled, resonating with an ancient power grasping at the fringes of reality. The stones glowed beneath us, fed by the energy of the incantation she had recited. In that moment, I felt the boundary between natural and supernatural blur. The air crackled with electricity, filled with a tension that threatened to break free. But just as the cloaked figures advanced, our invocation took flight. "What are you?" the leader gasped, and I could only watch, helpless, as shadows surged forth. I didn't know what would happen next, didn't fully understand what I had unleashed. But as light engulfed the clearing, the cloaked figures stumbled back, shouting incoherently. In that split second, I felt something shift. It was like the world was holding its breath, an ambiguous moment laden with uncertainty. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, there was nothing. Silence blanketed the clearing, the vibrant chaos replaced by a heavy stillness. I could barely see through the haze, disoriented and shaken. When I looked up again, the cloaked figures were gone. "Did it work?" I breathed, looking to the woman beside me, hope flaring up alongside the remnants of fear. "I think maybe," she replied, vulnerability etched across her features. But uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "But I can't be sure. We could still be at risk." In that chilling moment, swirling questions washed over me. Did we truly stop something dark from rising, or had we merely postponed a confrontation? I scanned the edges of the clearing. A place once heavy with fear felt now both liberated and dangerous. Shadows danced around the stones, creating an unsettling ambiance that hinted there was more to unravel. "We have to move," I whispered, the sense of urgency washing over me again, "before they regroup." With a fleeting glance at the glowing stones, we took our first steps toward an uncertain future, the lingering question of what truly waited in the woods weaving its way back into the fabric of my thoughts. As we disappeared deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, whether dark or light, was watching us from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal its intentions. And the truth about what really lay beneath Clearwater's surface still haunted me, a ghostly whisper in the back of my mind.